Let's welcome in Regina MP and former Conservative leader Andrew Scheer from his home here in Regina. Andrew, thanks for doing this. Let's talk about policy. Specifically, you heard Erin O'Toole in that piece mention that it could be repealed. How difficult would it be for a new government to either modify or remove that legislation?
Well, when Conservatives form the next government, Erin O'Toole has been very clear that we will repeal the legislation. So, fortunately, that is eminently possible under next Conservative government, and I think it's very important that we do that. As I was reading through the dissenting report, I saw a lot of mentions about how this ruling will erode provincial jurisdiction, that this will open up the door to new federal intrusions into areas like healthcare, management of natural resources. So I think in order to protect the balance between our country, between the interests of Western Canada, of Eastern Canada, that this Carbon Tax Act is repealed.
Another thing your leader said was the carbon pricing confirms that climate change is real, but a levy isn't the way to face this problem or to handle it. How would a Conservative government do that?
Well, our leader, Erin O'Toole, is going to be unveiling his environmental plan. One of the things I've always believed very strongly is that it doesn't make any sense for Canada to impose a carbon tax, to drive up the cost of doing business here in Canada, of purchasing consumer goods, and driving those jobs and driving production to other countries who don't have the same standards that we do. Global emissions will go up if we chase jobs and investment out of Canada into countries like China. They use far dirtier sources of energy for their production. So if we push those emissions to other countries, those emissions actually go up, and molecules of CO2 don't need a passport to travel around the country, around the world. That's why it's important that we take a global approach in reducing emissions and do more in Canada of things that we can produce at a lower rate of emissions.
We'll wait on the plan from Erin O'Toole coming in the near future, as you said. Sask egg groups say they're concerned that this could wipe out profits. Is that what you're hearing in your riding of Regina-Qu'Appelle?
Absolutely. You know, a couple of years ago, we had a very wet harvest, and almost every producer I talked to that year had to dry their grain. And in many cases, the cost of the carbon tax was more than the cost of the natural gas that they were using to dry the grain in the first place. In Western Canada, people don't have a whole lot of options when it comes to driving less or producing less on the farm. You know, someone commuting into Regina from a town like Indian Head or Southie, they can't drive halfway and then get out and walk, you know, and farmers can't dry part of their crop when they take it off the field. It's a real punitive tax. And the biggest thing lost in some of the conversation yesterday is the fact that the carbon tax isn't working. Emissions have gone up pre-pandemic every year that Justin Trudeau's been in office. He promised it would be revenue neutral. It's not. He promised he wouldn't raise it, and just before Christmas he announced that he's going to triple it. So, you know, this was a very important legal discussion yesterday, but we have to remember that the carbon tax is actually an ineffective way to reduce emissions.
All right, we'll continue to follow this conversation. Andrew Scheer, thank you for your time today.